first impression that comes to our mind about any college: tall buildings, big classrooms, large lobby areas, thick books, IT labs, assignments, class tests, and projects. Nothing besides that. Every hour, minute, second spent here help us carving and shaping our persona, cultivating innovative mindsets for the challenging world. Learning is a lifelong process. Sharing knowledge, inculcating values of life, spark the innovative horizons of mind. Fun and frolic is the nature of every nook and corner here. A daily dose of thrill we are sure to get here.
Good morning, one and all present here. I, Dr. Manasvi Maheshwari, on behalf of DME Media School, welcomes you all to another interesting session of SOP 2021. Students' Orientation Program has been conceptualized with the aim of providing an orientation to our students about various important courses they are going to study in this semester. Today's topic is on media research. And now I invite Professor Dr. Amrish Saxena, Dean DME Media School, to deliver welcome address.
Thank you, Dr. Manasvi Maheshwari. Welcome, Professor Meera Desai, to this session. You are kind enough to spare time for us last year also and this year also, and we found that there can be no better person than you to talk about media research. The way you took the session last year, it was so interesting. So that is why, despite knowing that you are so much overburdened with new administrative responsibilities as registrar of SNDT University, which is a big thing, no doubt. But then, even then, you are with us this morning to talk to our students. Now, talking about this whole program, which we call the session orientation program. Normally, what is done with whenever the new batch is joining, we organize the orientation program, and this happens in all the educational institutions. But since last year, we thought that we should also organize an orientation for the second year and the third year students, because they are studying different subjects in different semesters. And then last year, the conditions were such, and this year also, I mean, we are under influence of this COVID-19, that in the physical space, nothing was happening. So that way also, we thought that this could bridge that gap which exists between the college and the students, and some additional input will be there with the students before they formally start with the semester. So this normally our semester starts on 1st of August, but then since everything is delayed, so this year the semester is starting now for the second year and the third year. For the first year, obviously, the admission process is still incomplete. So there are different papers in, as I said, already third and the fifth semester, but one of the important papers in fifth semester is media research. And media research is there as a subject, as a theory subject, as a practical subject also, because in our curriculum, we have a system wherein there are independent practical papers which are associated, which are linked to a theory paper. So media research is both theory paper as well as the lab paper or the practical paper. Besides this, there are other subjects where in media research application, so whatever is learned under research, that is applied to other subjects. And in the last semester, that is the sixth semester, students are supposed to do their dissertations. So that is again to some extent, though choices are given to the students, but then a lot of research is involved. That is why we always wish that the research foundation is such wherein the students can take up all kind of research projects, research assignments smoothly. So that is how this session is being organized. I once again welcome you, Professor Meera Desai, to this session, and we hope that something really good will come out from this session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So before I hand over to our guest of today, Professor Dr. Meera Desai, I would like to take a quick minute to introduce you all to the special guest. Professor Desai is Head Department of Extension and Communication. She started her career at Ahmedabad with Development and Educational Communication Unit at Indian Space Research Organization as a social researcher in 1990 after completing her master's in development communication. She joined postgraduate Department of Home Science Extension Education as SNDT Women's University as visiting faculty in 1997 and joined as a full-timer in 1998 as associate professor, where she is now professor since 2009 and head of the department since July 2014. She was given additional charge of registrar in April 2021. Meera ma'am has formal qualification in commerce, development communication, distance education, extension education, participatory research, women's studies, and gender. She has worked for print media, reporting for Times of India, Ahmedabad, television production. She was researcher, scriptwriter, and anchor. For internet, she has been doing blogging for long and alternate media like newsletter editor and documentary filmmaker. Environments besides field experience in rural women empowerment program for close to 5 years before entering into the academics. She has presented papers at number of IMCR and AMIC conferences and has number of publications for her credits, including 7 books and journal papers, book chapters, SLM material, and popular articles in English, Gujarati, and Hindi. She received Government of India recognition for her book manuscript for neo-literates in 2012. Her interests of areas are audience reception, Indian television, research methodology, women's studies, gender and development, sociology, and technology. So we have a very versatile guest today, and I'm sure the session will be benefiting for all of us. We welcome you again, ma'am, and thank you so much for being there. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that long, elaborate introduction. And thank you, Amrish sir, for inviting me and remembering me again, because it was a pleasure last time interacting with all of you. We have about half an hour, right? Or 1 hour?
1 hour, 1 hour.
Okay. No, because as you and I know, as teachers, we can kind of keep talking.
Yeah.
So you can always stop me if you think that that's kind of gone beyond what it should have been. What I intend to do broadly is today to talk about media research. What is it and why do we do it? And as already been said, like I've been into research for about 30 years now, and I've been professionally paid doing research. So I feel that it's a very exciting space, but I recognize that and I have had that experience that some of my master's students asked me once, saying that why is it that you want us to do research? And that's where I kind of probably worked more in that direction, saying that it's essential that we should kind of tell our students why it is essential to kind of do research. Before that, just to kind of set a ground, we all and all of you are going to study, and you are studying communication. So it is essential to recognize that when we talk about communication, it's not only about facts, opinions, emotions, and ideas, which we all for sure kind of do. But as we are right now connected, communication is technology, and communication also is a reality that I might lose connection in between. So that's a reality that we all need to recognize. At the same time, communication is a process and also a product. So when you're watching a film, you're seeing a final product, but the process of making that film, now we know that it itself also is a product, because you have like films made on how film was made. So communication is a process as well as product, and communication is ideology. So the moment we are communicating, I'm talking in English right now, and we are assuming that you all understand English, and we are kind of undermining the idea that as Indians, we talk in multiple languages, and it's not necessary that we need to communicate in English. So whatever said and done, the communication is a kind of an ideology. Just to kind of take that from there, what is media? Because a lot of people feel that, and especially when you are a student of media, you feel that every communication is a media. And it's essential to kind of recognize that media are actually independent of a process of communication, because we all communicate without even knowing that we are communicating. The way we dress up, the way we do our hair, the way we kind of interact with others, the kind of words we use, because that speaks about who we are and where we come from. But media is kind of a device through which you are reaching out to large number of people. And also the kind of debate with social media and digital media, as we all are aware, is not only in terms of kind of large number of people, but it becomes far more complex, because in the history of media education, we used to talk about mass communication. And now we talk about media, which is like social media. And then we talk about reaching out to individuals one-on-one and reaching out to anyone. So the two important concepts with reference to media are the idea of time and space, because what media does is that helps you overcome a time. What a film of like Independent India of 1947, if you watch, then you go into that time. But you may be sitting in 2021. So media helps you transact the kind of time. You can go into different time and kind of experience those points and those kind of experiences and those kind of representations. Media again is a reality, because if you have been watching Friends or you're watching Korean pop, then that's your reality. And that may not be the reality of a lot of others who are watching probably Aaj Tak. So, and there's nothing against Aaj Tak. The idea is that we all create our own worlds, and that worlds is constructed out of the kind of media that we consume. We have to recognize as students of media and kind of people interested in working for media, is that media is the capital and their institutions, because without money and without kind of institutional spaces, media cannot be constructed. Though now in today's time, individuals have become kind of YouTube channels. We all are aware that in a lockdown, we saw kind of fascinating examples of people doing all sorts of things with digital media. The fact remains that media is a conglomerate, and there is a kind of a global media, and there is a ownership of that global media, which defines the kind of reality that you want to construct. So if I'll ask any of you now about Afghanistan, and I'm sure all of you would have a same opinion about Afghanistan, because that's the kind of media that we have been showed and has been represented. That's the kind of media that we have been told that that country is, and probably that's not a reality, because the reality may be different. You might Google around, look for some independent Afghani journalist, and then you might see her or his blog, and you might get another version of the story. So that's something that we need to recognize, that media builds up an ideology. Media is built on technology like communication today, and they are vehicles to sell the products. So advertising, public relations, integrated marketing, communication, all these are the kind of functions by which media helps us do that. Just to kind of give you a brief context, and why am I talking about media and communication basics, is because I feel that the simplest things are the most difficult things to understand. Because if you are mixing up communication and media, then when you talk about research, you will do the same thing. Communication is a far more broader and kind of a landscape concept, wherein media is far more specific and is a kind of a particular kind of a concept. So when we talk about types of media, I'm sure you recognize the kind of different things that are listed here. You can always Google around and look for them, and they'll give you a kind of an understanding. The other thing is, a lot of this material is online. So if you go on a slide share and look for my name, then you'll get this material there, because I keep that. Now, coming to talk about research, one has to understand that the term that comes to our mind is science. Okay, and when we talk about science, then we usually talk about something to do with evidences. Like none of us ever question that why is it that sun comes from the east and not from the west. But like if you go probably 1,000 years back, then people were killed on that idea that person said that sun comes up, because people were not ready to believe that. They thought that sun is a god and he appears and disappears, and probably all sorts of kind of assumptions around that. So but today, like as a human society, we can think about probably going and vacationing in spacecraft probably 10 years from now, and you have people doing those kind of experimentations and those kind of processes. So science is kind of an exploration, is also an explanation of something, and it's also an evidence. So when we say climate change, and we all are experiencing that climate change, we have evidences that our monsoons are becoming different, and our winters are not as they were earlier. So the science helps us understand nature as human beings. The other thing that am I still connected, Manasvi?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You are. Yes.
Yeah, no, because I am getting the message that my internet is unstable. So Then the other integral component is obviously you and me, so the human beings and the nature. And there is a relationship between us, obviously, because if there is a monsoon, you will need an umbrella and you will go out. Starting from that basic to more complex levels, where we say that if climate change is happening, there are going to be some islands which will sink in a kind of a few years from now. So that's a kind of a relationship where the entire civilization of that island will kind of disappear from the human history. So that's something that one needs to kind of recognize. And then there are societies, obviously. So when we talk about science, what we are understanding is the relationship between human beings, between nature, and between the number of human beings. So if we say communities and societies, because you are in Delhi, but I'm sure a lot of students are in all over the country right now, and you are a part of a society which is very different from some other society. So that's how these civilizations are born. What science helps us is an understanding and having a kind of a revelations about what the way people behave or what people do, how they go about doing something. What is it that societies are built upon, and what is it like? What is like? Just now we started talking, and sir was saying that the younger generations don't get up early, when probably 50 years back, people used to get up early. So there is a shift that is happening in terms of the way night is being treated, because in a history of time, there were no electricity, there were challenges with reference to the resources. So people would not stay awake in the night. Today, you have a kind of abundance of electricity, abundance of internet, and a lot of resources. So you are not bothered, you will kind of stay awake. And because you stay awake in the night, you will kind of not get up in the morning. But science helps us understand the relationships, insights, and kind of relationships. So just to kind of get in terms of the kind of one second. Yeah. So just to kind of get into the relationships between science, research, and knowledge, because these are the three words that you will keep hearing for probably next 5 years that you will do your master's, because research and dissertation is an integral part of exercise of getting a degree. Because if you want a master's, then internet will give you information, but the research is something that you'll have to do. And like I'm dealing with one of my past student who passed out 20 years back, and at SNDT we are experimenting with this what we call academic bank credit of banks project, where ex-students of PG diploma will come back and they will get a master's degree after 1 year, because they have already done X number of credits. And she continuously kept saying that I've been doing advertising for 20 years and I don't think I have anything left to be learned. And I actually had to sit with her and tell her that that you can't look at learning and knowledge like that. So at some point we came to a consensus that that there is something that she still needs to learn. And this happens extremely more in the kind of media profession, because all those who work in media, and because they are practitioners, they feel that the theories and knowledge and the research that we talk about in our classrooms is irrelevant or is redundant. And that's one of the debates that I continuously do, because my argument is that when you have a kind of a conceptual understanding of something, you're not going to get carried away by what is happening in practice, because you'll be able to conceptualize, you'll be able to theorize, and then you'll be able to draw conclusions of your own. And that helps you understand something, which is like today, nobody have to sit with you and help you kind of do your A to Z alphabets. But when you were in a nursery, then your mother or your father or somebody in your family had to hold your hands and then make you kind of write that. So similarly, research is a kind of a process which helps you understand how anything can be studied systematically and scientifically, and there is a procedure to it. So research trains you in kind of creating a new knowledge, trains you in contributing that knowledge and understanding the kind of evidences that exist before by somebody else. So science comes out of this word knowledge, and a lot of times our understanding of science is that anything to do with labs and anything to do with the kind of lab course and something very pure science kind of a thing. But you have to realize that science is a systematic body of knowledge, and that is not something that we need to kind of look at only with reference to pure sciences, because research builds up new knowledge, and that builds up a science, and that science is the kind of academic discipline that we talk about. I'll kind of broadly go back and forth for some of these things. So you need to realize that there is something called pure science, which I said, natural sciences, where we talk about what you would have studied. If you did your sciences, then you did chemistry, biology, physics, and all sorts of other things. But there's something that we call social sciences, which is like psychology, sociology, anthropology, and all. Then there's something called humanities, where we talk about languages and literary arts and performing arts. And then we talk about applied sciences. So like I worked for home science, and I'm still a part of a home science department at SNDT, which is kind of known globally, is that it's a science. So a lot of people have this notion about home science as something to do with cooking and something to do with children, wherein the fact is that that's a very interesting discipline to kind of understand, because they have a kind of 5 different branches, and then each of these branches have its own kind of understanding about how homes can be run better. And then the debate obviously we are right now in is whether homes will sustain the time of history, because the way families are changing, the way people are working in our different geographies, and like there are all sorts of socio-cultural changes that are taking place in our society today. So when we talk about branches of knowledge, then how do you build up these branches of knowledge? Because when we talk about communication or media research, we're talking about something called behavioral science, because it kind of builds up on the idea of how do people behave. So there's something called research process, okay, or steps in research, in other words. So we need to kind of formulate a research problem, which is to do with what am I interested in researching. You will have to do some review of literature, which means somebody else has researched it before. Like a lot of times, a lot of us start researching, we feel that किसी ने नहीं किया होगा, I'm doing it for the first time in my, and therefore nobody else has done it. And then when you start, I think Googling, because by your context, you did Googling, we went to libraries and we looked at a kind of a categorizations, which is what I'll go back to after a while, is to kind of realize that there's a lot of work that people have done in the kind of history of time, because any discipline that we talk about, like just to give you a rough idea, sociology is built up about 400 years back. Communication is still a new science. Like in a conceptual sense of the term, we say that Marshall McLuhan is supposed to be the kind of person who started talking about understanding media, and that happened in around 1960. So communication as a science is still a kind of very young science, and therefore though people are communicating for 5,000 years, the communication as a discipline or as a science is still a kind of shaping up. And obviously, as technology has brought us all sorts of other things, we have realized that the communication as a science is still kind of to be studied more, because every day things are changing. And we kind of talk about television as a traditional media now, like, which is kind of scary to me, because we always thought traditional media is like folk forms. And probably folk forms are also changing, because people who live in villages are changing the way they practice the art. So there is all sorts of things that are happening. And I'm sure you are kind of, if you have not, please follow it up in terms of what is happening with Sabyasachi's controversy about folk artists and how do we appropriate knowledge. So once you have seen what others have researched, you make decisions about how do you want to research. And that's a methodology in a research language. And then you decide your samples, you decide your data collection designs, you will say whom will you get the data from and how will you get the data. And then you will actually collect the data and you'll have to analyze that data. The data, I am dealing with my dissertation students and my PhD students, and I realize that because you send a Google form and you get the data and Google does graphs for you, you feel that the data is done. Wherein the reality is that a lot of times the data needs to be cleaned and that data needs to be kind of understood, basically because you don't have a human interface. The machine data is not the data. So we are kind of looking, now talking about AI impacting our human intelligence, because before you type, Facebook will type for you, or before you type, your spelling gets auto-corrected. And I'm sure you all had your own set of experiences about how your relationships get into troubles if you will send a wrong message, or what happens when something is kind of auto-sent. Or like I got 10 days back, I got a message from one of my deputy registrars saying that email went by mistake, wherein that that email was extremely offending and I actually can suspend him. So these are the things that one has to recognize with technology. And then once you have a kind of analysis and interpretations, you will write a report. So that's usually the kind of way we deal with that. So I was kind of, I'm sure this is little kind of dated for most of you, but you need to realize that there's something called library that a lot of us went to at some point, and they are fascinating spaces to go to. That will help you to see other things. A lot of times I tell my students that it's a good idea to go to a physical library and stand into racks and understand the kind of titles that they have, because the book titles gives you an idea in terms of the way knowledge is kind of structured or labeled. So when you go to a library, the library has a system of categorizing knowledge, because I'm sure you are aware that library sciences is also called information and knowledge sciences. Like all our libraries have been renamed as knowledge resource centers. When you kind of go to a library, then you should look at social sciences as a communication student, because that helps you understand and see things. Then you look at a kind of, you can also look at literature, because a lot of communication is also literature. You can look at a philosophy, because that helps you understand. Philosophy is a science of knowledge. So how knowledge is built up. So these are the kind of things that helps you understand. I had a kind of a quick brief on how American Psychological Association defines the discipline of psychology. And that's where I was saying that communication is still a new science. You might, I'm not too sure what your expectations were with reference to media research, but I recognize and realize that a lot of you are undergraduate students, and you have to realize that any discipline or any subject in our language takes years to build up, and that knowledge has its own trajectory of building it up. So when you kind of go back and look at American psychology as a kind of a space, and I'm not talking about a psychology as a discipline, please understand that. So because Indian psychology is different from American psychology, because American psychology predominantly is constructed out of people who are born Americans, and they would have a worldview. That is, and that's where there is a kind of a debate now within the discipline about how each of these disciplines also need to be kind of culturally oriented. We also have a kind of a area of study which we label as cultural studies, and we label as kind of a lot of other names are given to it in terms of understanding how they're located. So here is a kind of a brief trajectory of last 400 plus years of American psychology, and where they talk about, because when they initially started researching psychology, which like is a kind of very interesting discipline, and I didn't study it. I recently did some courses on Coursera because I was interested in understanding psychology as a subject. And they were kind of obsessed with this idea of numbers, because if I tell you that there are kind of researches which says that women are dumb and men are intelligent, those kind of researches came out of measuring the brain of a woman. And you will be amused that how today you will say, what nonsense, how can you say that? But the fact is that about 400 years back, when they measured the brains of the men and brains of women, then they said that because the brain is small, therefore she's dumb. And that's kind of idiotic. We all have enough evidences today, and Olympics is there to tell us that women are far more smarter and sharper than men. But the reality is that each subject, discipline, and research has its own areas of building up. So if you see here, starting from 1600 to like today, when we talk about 2020, so I think that's much longer. How many years that is? About 600 years, almost. Yeah. So if you see what happens in any academic discipline is that you start getting journals. So the research is shaped up. So if you kind of look at communication or you look at media research, there is a very interesting journal called Media, Society and Culture. So that's a kind of a journal that gets published which talks about media, society and culture. And then you have another journal called Creative Communications, which is published from India. So you have all these journals which are kind of a landmark in terms of how knowledges are built up and how they are shaped up and how they are consolidated. So research journals are very important spaces to look at. Now, coming to media research, we a lot of times talk about 5 broad disciplines, because there is nothing like a pure media research discipline. It is still shaping up, as I said, because it's only about 70, 80 years that communications research has become a space. Because we talk about around 1930s as a time when the studies with reference to Hitler. So when all the kind of bad things happen to the human society, there are good things that happen along with that. And there are a lot of theories we are aware of called propaganda and agenda setting and all this. They came out of that socio-political reality in Germany and also in US, where they came out with this understanding about communication research as a discipline. Because before that, anthropology, economics, political science, and sociology and psychology has contributed to media research. So they used to research media, but they didn't study it from a pure media perspective. They studied it from their own location. So people who were in anthropology studied culture, and when they studied culture, they studied communication. People in political science looked at a power and dynamics of power, and they looked at communication by saying how power impacts the communication. People in psychology studies human behavior, and they study communication by saying how do people talk and what do they talk when they are scared, or how do they kind of interact with others. Sociology talks about how communities are built and how do communities communicate, and what is the kind of pattern of intergenerational transfer of information or intergenerational knowledge building. Economics talks about how economic transactions are built up and what is the kind of so all this had a communication there, but communication research as a discipline is kind of still a new discipline. And also you need to realize that when you talk about media and entertainment as an industry, because it's an industry, you can't say that I'm interested in media, but then what in media? Because media is not a kind of one single concept. It has a kind of multiple things around there. So what you see out there is like the categorizations by which media is kind of looked at as an industry. And each of this is unique. Each of this has its own sectors. Each of this has its own clientele, because somebody who loves advertising may not make documentaries usually, because there's an orientation that people have. And that's how they kind of look at things like that. Film entertainment is a huge, broad area. So when you are looking at only a kind of a Hindi cinema of a XYZ director, you are forgetting the fact that there are corporate films and there are documentaries and there are animation films and there is a shorts. And now we know that YouTube shorts and all sorts of short video is another area that is a big area, which has kind of taken over actually a full length feature. Like I have a 16-year-old at home who's not interested in watching a full length feature. And it's kind of pretty sad because full length feature has its own kind of value. But the fact is that you want a kind of, as a generation, you want a kind of a short, quick things. So that's a shift that has taken place. But each of this sector provides you an employment. Each of this sector demands a research method, which is different. Each of this sector needs to be looked at as an independent of each other. So you need to realize as a student of media and communication that it's not kind of one uniform category. There are a lot of things out there which needs to be kind of looked at. So, when we kind of then talk about media sector classifications, the older context is of mass media. I'm sure all of you are aware of, and at some point must have grown up with, but you're all 20, around 20 plus. So you all grew up with internet, which is not the case with a lot of us who were kind of born in black and white television era. So there is a kind of a shift that is there. And therefore, all of you are these other media people because you have kind of been looking at mobile, telecom, internet and outdoors, because that's where the shift has come. But you have to also realize that there is a kind of a specialization within there with reference to advertising, acting, journalism, PR and gaming. And obviously the allied disciplines to all this, because a TV anchor who looks very sleepy and who's not been decked up will not be looked at. And for that matter, all of you are used to this idea of looking at a good looking videos. So nobody wants to kind of watch probably a film called Par, which was made once upon a time, which is a kind of a painful film, or probably Satyajit Ray will make no sense to a lot of you, even if you, I'm sure Amrish sir will push you to kind of watch some films, but the reality is that they don't make much of a sense to you, because the reality in which you are built up is very, very different from the reality that the society is in right now. And why is it that COVID led a lot of us and shook a lot of us? Because it helped you see that reality that we had shunned ourselves to. Like we were not ready to accept the fact that a lot of people don't have food to eat. A lot of people don't have transport to go home. So that's something that happened to a lot of us, and that's where the kind of a shift that take place. I'm going to skip some of these things because when we talk about media research, then some of these things you can look at because they helps you understand kind of the issues in terms of how you can research media. My area of work is in media and culture, and things that I look at, because I look at within the whole spectrum. I look at language as one of the important things, and I've worked a lot in terms of languages because I kind of studied in my own mother tongue, and then now the new education policy is also talking about vernacular education. But like I find this fascinating about how language is also kind of shifting in terms of the culture. So that's kind of another thing that I'm interested in. I work on cultural imperialism because my understanding is that the culture is a very strong and very kind of a defined entity. And like today morning, I had a kind of a discussion where a group of us were discussing about what kind of changes taking place in our society. And I just made a statement that when it comes to marriage, nothing will change. It'll go back to what, like the way my mother got married, the same way I got married, and probably my daughter will get married. And I had this young kid around there in the discussion. She said, yeah, what you're saying is true. My parents are not understanding the way I look at marriage. And that's where the shift is taking place, because there is a kind of a lot of conflict now, and that's where the culture is kind of going through. And there are kind of very interesting areas where some of my friends are also working on, is called modernity and parallel modernity, that we have people who would be modern in one area but not modern in another one. So all those are the areas that one can research. So there are ways and means by which media research can be categorized. One of it is to kind of look at them in terms of the production. I'm sure some of you would be interested in making films or writing books or doing all sorts of things. So there is a concept of a formative research, which is more in terms of the pre-production research. So before you do anything, like before I was to talk to you, I did this session last year actually, and sir told me that why don't you do it one more time, and I had jokes saying, can I use the same PPT? So he said, yeah, no problem. And then I go to my class and say that some of my slides have not changed in last 20 years because I feel those things have not changed. But the way the class takes place changes, because in a face-to-face class, the discussion makes up the class. And here we are into this monologue, one-way, blank screen kind of discussions for last 1.5 years, and we've got used to it now as teachers. But it's a kind of a sad way of looking at education, and that's kind of my personal take. And then there's something called process research. You are all undergraduate students, but you can look at EPG Pathshala. There's something called EPG Pathshala, which is a kind of a open source resource. And there is a program called MA Communication and Media Studies, and there is a kind of a paper called Development Communication, which kind of I curated, and there is a kind of a theory around there, which you can get some of this discussions there, because one of the critical challenges that we have in Indian media education is to have textbooks of certain caliber. And a lot of us are doing all sorts of other things, and we hardly have time to write books, even if we want to. So there is no standard textbook that we can all refer to. Still, one of the things that I kind of recommend, and I always tell students to look at, is to look at Dennis McQuill's mass communication theory, because that has remained, I think, for last 30 years. I've seen that it's a static text that helps, and I'm sure Keval Kumar has done a kind of pretty decent job, which I saw as a student, and but I have problems there in that text. But the fact is that I've not written another one, so you have to respect sir for looking at the text that he has created. So in media research, the last step is the post-production stage. You did a communication, but you have to test whether that communication worked or not, and that's a kind of a post-production. The reason I show this as Spook, because something that you do as a post-production can become a pre-production for the next stage. So there is a cycle that takes place within that. The other way of looking at communication is to define them by methods. So it depends on what kind of method you want to employ. You can do a kind of something that is catching up now with the social media, is the sentiment analysis, network analysis, because in Twitter and in Facebook and all these places, one can kind of study what is going, what people like and what is being liked and why it is being retweeted and things like that. But the older context is to look at case studies, surveys, experiments, and all that. Ethnography is another method that is borrowed from anthropology. Content analysis is borrowed from education. So media research has borrowed methods from different places. In terms of the conceptual classifications, we talk about political economy as a kind of a mode of looking at, because the idea is to kind of look at how communication is created or how media is created. So if you, I was talking to kind of Sony Marathi 10 days back, and we have a scholarship in our university with Sony Marathi, and they said, no, but our approvals come from New York. So that's a political economy, that you talk about a channel which is a Marathi channel. It is labeled as Sony Marathi, but the financial approvals come from US. So that how media is controlled and who controls it and how it is being kind of, if you can use a word, manipulated, because there is nothing called pure media anymore. Like the media that we were taught, and something that we usually consider that as a kind of an ideals of fourth estate of democracy and all that, is a kind of under a lot of threat today. Then there is a kind of a classification of looking at flows, and there's a concept of platform economy that is catching up. There's something called platform capitalism. So that's another area that to look at, because that's something that is very interesting happening. I don't know, but how many of you experience that? But like 2 days back, I got a auto update for my Samsung mobile, and now they push me content. I have to kind of go back. I had to sit back and kind of do a lot of offs for my settings. So there is a platform that is going to control what we are consuming. So you don't have like you go on a Facebook and they push you a kind of content. So that's something that is becoming very, very important, especially in a digital space, because the flows are going to be, you watched a film because your friend recommended it, or you go and read a newspaper because somebody is reading in your family. But today what is going to happen is that when you have a Google story on your phone, the Google is going to push you certain things. And then when you search for some product, then next time when you log in, that same product will be pushed to you. So that is the kind of entire thing that is happening with reference to platform capitalism and flow studies. And there's something called consumption, where we talk about cultural studies by saying, do audiences have power? Do audiences control what they are going through or what they are consuming? So having said what is media research, I'll kind of drop there. I'll spend a little time on why do we do media research? Okay, because that's something that I started off by saying that a lot of my students had asked me once, saying, why do we do research? Now, obviously you want a degree and you're doing that because that's kind of one of the simplest way of saying that you look at this one sheet of paper where you will kind of probably throw a degree cap, and then you'll feel happy about it, saying that aap graduate ho gaye, ya postgraduate ho gaye, ya PhD ho gaye. So a lot of students do research because they want a degree. But what is very important and critical, and which none of us can see actually, that's something very fascinating I find, because a student walks to me in her first year master's, and when she walks out, she is a different person. And she knows that, and I know that. And that's a knowledge that we're building up in our classrooms, in our interactions, in our kind of discussions, in our seminars. So it's very simple. And you have a DMA video which talks about good infrastructure and good teachers. Personally, I a lot of times feel that the good teacher can kind of lead and make that infrastructure better. Even if I don't have any infrastructure, I can still contribute to my students' learning, because it's a question of how am I kind of transacting with my students. So, but when it comes to research, we do research because, and we should do that ideally, because it builds you up in your own understanding, how you look at things, what is your kind of understanding of something. And I'm not talking about information, please understand. I'm not talking about Google. I'm not talking about, yesterday I did some inauguration of one of my college, and that person had looked at my biodata and she said, I headed Times of India in Ahmedabad. And I actually had to start by saying that I never headed Times of India in Ahmedabad. Then I would not have been in academics. I would be doing something else. So the question is that what you are seeing on Google is not what actually is. It's just a pure information that is being kind of transacted, but that doesn't build up your knowledge. Knowledge is something that you build up on your own experiences, on your own transactions, on your dealing with others, on your own understanding of a kind of a concept that you still are kind of figuring it out. For communicators, the media research helps in policy making. They make decisions about how do you create communications. The formatting research that I talked about by saying that what kind of stories you want, what kind of characters you want, Like, why is it that a film like Beta Fry did a lot of money? Because at that point in time, the kind of films we were watching were not making sense. So you had something that made sense. And today, like, why is it that something works and something doesn't work? Because ultimately, communication is about connecting. Communication is about community. Communication is about having a common ground of understanding. So the whole dimension of creating communication is a kind of a long-standing process. You can't look at making a film. So I have students who kind of take a camera, they shoot something and they say, oh, they've made a film. That's not a film. Otherwise, you would not spend 4 years only studying camera or only studying sound at FTII. So one has to understand that there's something behind that we probably still don't know, or we might still have to understand, and we still have to figure it out as an individuals. So in a kind of communication, you have to decide what will be my story, how will my characters behave, how do I want to treat it, who are my audiences, what kind of things I want to create, what kind of solutions I want to give, because I'm creating a Blue Pepsi and Blue Pepsi bombs because obviously the audience did not accept it. So advertisers have to sell products, so they do media research. Marketers do it because they want more profits, and probably researchers do it because they want to predict trends. I want to sit down and say that probably 5 years from now the books will do big. Like before the lockdown, I'm not sure if you're aware that a lot of newspapers are closing down globally. But in India, we were doing a big business. Like you can go and look at WAN website, WAN, World Association of Newspapers. And India was one of the exceptions in the world where newspapers were doing well at that point in time. I'm not sure what is happening today. One has to go back and check because with the lockdown, newspapers closed down. And you can research around you. You can talk to people around you. You can see in your own families what happened to newspaper industry. Newspapers have come back. People have started subscribing newspapers. So we don't know what will happen 5 years from now. We don't know what will happen to books. Like we say that, oh, Kindle was doing big, but today people are going back and still buying books. So one has to understand that communication is kind of media research, helps you understand how societies communicate and what do they do. Why do I do research? So I got my degree, obviously, by doing research. I actually get money out of that so that I can eat cake. And obviously, there's a lot of experience and recognition. Like I've never met Dr. Amrish Saxena. Okay, we just know each other online. Okay, he might have seen some work that I have done. So you get a recognition for the work that you do as a researcher. When you publish material, people read that and people come back to you. So it gives you a lot of experience as an individual. So research actually helps you, apart from getting cake and getting a degree, helps you understand a lot of things, and it's kind of pretty exciting field. I'm kind of saying that after doing research for 30 years. So that's kind of one thing. What I usually tell my students about why you should do research, and I suppose it applies to a lot of you, because I assume that this is a kind of a session in orientation, and you should understand, recognize why research is so exciting, because that helps you see that for next 5 years or 3 years of studies that you will go into, because if you obviously you do, some of you will for sure do masters, and research is inevitable if you want to do masters. It actually helps you understand and explore your curiosity. Like I'll just give one example that I have a student this year who I was dealing with, and she wanted to research what is happening in school classrooms because of online classes. And she is a student in Bombay, but she is from Jharkhand, and she stays in this place called Raipur, and she wanted to kind of research school children. And you'll not believe, but it took us 4 months to define what she will research. And we are not meeting, we are doing video calls, we are talking to each other, we are texting each other, but it took her a long time to understand what she can research. So you understand about yourself as a person, because every time I did something, she will say, ma'am, you told me. And I used to get kind of mad by saying that I told you, but do you have your brains? Why don't you use your own brain and think about it by saying, why are you doing that? So that's the kind of another thing, because you have to recognize that what do you think is your own mind and what is the world outside your mind. And these are two different realities. Okay, so research helps you understand that. Research helps you manage time, money, and resources, and obviously everything else apart from your own guide, because research helps you manage the people that you deal with, and you have to do things in time, and you have to do all those things. It helps you to be ready with new answers every time. So research kind of is very exciting, and research helps you understand that everything can be questioned. As a student of media and communication, you have to understand that to ask right question is the most challenging thing than to kind of just ask questions. Okay, I hope you'll have some more. So I suppose I kept time, and you can always stop me, Manasvi, because I can keep talking. I do usually 2 to 4 hour classes in my postgraduate class. So that's my challenge. But all the best, and you can always decide and define where you go from what you are. And thanks a lot for your time and patience. It was wonderful, I suppose, for me at least. I'm not sure about you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. You not only, kept the session in time, but you actually made research so interesting. And in the nutshell, you have explained all the aspects of research. So there are a lot of questions which we were facing, because I also teach this subject to the students. So there was a lot of questions which were coming up all these, last 2-3 days, ma'am. How, when, how do we decide the topic? Because we are in a very initial stage right now. So I think your session was, you beautifully, very aptly, you have made our job easy. So thank you so much. And we have some questions here. So there's one question which is about what is the future of post-colonial research and research on colonial mindset given the present situation?
So it's going to be big actually, because Rootleg is selling a book that I am getting launched in 2022 at 10,000 rupees. If it was not a kind of a colonial mindset to sell an Indian knowledge at 10,000 rupees a book, then I think that's what the future holds for us. But I assume that what I find interesting as an Indian scholar is that earlier we had this very kind of Oriental notion of how India is and what Indians do, and like people from outside researched India. And what is happening is, with more competences in-house, we have more Indians researching more Indian issues and from an Indian lens. And I'm very conscious and clear about it as a person, that I feel that there's high time that we talk about our issues in our language. I don't want a kind of a colonial hangover on my mind to kind of talk to them in their language. And I assume some of you for sure recognizes what I spoke about, because it's little deep in terms of the abstraction. But why am I also publishing a book for Rootleg in English is by itself that, by saying that you want to kind of address colonial hangover in a colonial language to colonials so that we can reach out. So I feel there's a big future, there's a lot of possibilities, but I just hope that that we are not getting into shortcuts. We kind of do a sensible job, because I feel and I see that loads of times that as Indians, we have a tendency to kind of do a little shoddy, quick fix, easy ways of doing things. So I recognize that as an Indian, and I am not ashamed about saying that, because I feel that it's high time that we kind of recognize and see ourselves and become self-critical about our own kind of gaps, and then get over them and then deliver a quality. Because whatever said and done, I think all of us understand what is quality. I don't think one needs to kind of even if that person is a beggar on a road, and if you give that person a kind of a ganda food, that person knows that it's a ganda food, and that person will not eat it. So there is a quality, is a kind of a sacrosanct, and that remains there. So I think there is a lot of future in my understanding. I hope that responds to the person who asked.
The next one is, okay, because like I said, students are still, they are deciding about what topic they need to research on. So there's one question which says that what parameters should we keep in mind while deciding a research theme or a topic? So what should be the criteria or parameters they should look? Because actually we are getting a lot of times when people are saying, ye bhi karna hai, we need to do this also. So if you can just give some idea on that.
So usually what I deal with the masters and PhD students. So you might have your own set of experiences, because I've never taught in undergraduate programs. So that is one limitation that I have. But one thing that I always tell people who are starting a research, or I'm dealing with one very senior fellow who is a kind of a practitioner. I'm dealing with him because he wants to start to write a book, and I'm kind of mentoring him, saying that this is how you can go about. So why am I saying this is that there are two things that I look at. One is that that's something that you can live with. So if you say that I'm interested in this area, and do you want to kind of live with that for next 6 months, 8 months, 4 years, because as a PhD student, you have to live with that topic for like 3 years. So take up something that is kind of you are curious about and you are excited about and you want to do that. That's kind of one. Second is that don't become very ambitious, because आप कोई Nobel laureate या Pulitzer Prize winner नहीं बनने वाले हैं इस research से. तो वो clarity रख के ना एक छोटा सा चीज करिए पर अच्छे से करिए. What I usually say that, because क्या होता है कि जब वो शुरू करते हैं तो गूगल करते हैं तो पहले जो 4 पेज आ रहे हैं उसी पे वो डिसाइड करते हैं कि वो क्या करेंगे. अब वो 4 पेज में जो किया हुआ है और जिसने भी किया है उसके बहुत सारे लिमिटेशंस है प्लेटफॉर्म इकोनॉमी के, कि वो आपको क्यों पहले फेंका गया. सो 15वें पेज पे जाइए और देखिए, गूगल स्कॉलर पे जाइए और देखिए. So try and kind of narrow your search as much as possible. Look at a time frame. Don't kind of become ambitious and think about doing 50 things. Just do a small narrow job. And I use a example of a torch, because I say that you'll have to put a torch and say, ये circle मैं कर रही हूँ, इस circle के बाहर मैं कुछ नहीं करूँगा या करूँगी. So that's something that I usually tell people who are formulating a research problem. I hope that answers.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Another question is about, is research in culture and media majorly empirical in nature?
Not really, actually, because anthropologists have done a lot of work. Actually, one of my PhD guide and master's guide is Dr. Binod C. Agrawal. Like, I owe it to him in terms of my, so he came from US and he studied in US and he came from an empirical framework. But when he kind of started doing research in SITE, because he's considered to be a person who did a lot of work in at the time of SITE, satellite instruction television experiment, which is one of the things that you are all being taught, even if it makes sense or not today is another thing. But that's kind of integral part of our kind of communication history in India. There is a lot of work that has happened qualitative, and especially of late in last 5 years, lot of cultural studies, qualitative, non-empirical, interpretive, subjective researches have taken place. So I don't agree that that it's only empirical. But we have an obsession with numbers, that's a fact. So a lot of us feel that survey is the only good research, nothing else is a good research. So that's something that we can't help.
Exactly, and that's how it is being, you know, pushed or down from the guides also, that you should have, you know, numbers and quantitative things in your
आपने
research.
statistics नहीं किया तो आपने research नहीं किया.
Actually,
that's how it gets looked at.
Exactly. So this one goes for, it's like a very basic question, that how do we reduce the researcher's bias?
I am still working on it, to be very honest. so it's kind of endless. The moment you decide your topic, you're biased if you realize that. Why are you researching this and not that? That is in itself a bias. So it's kind of extremely challenging. But my understanding is that if you keep talking about your topic to 10 people, and then you get to kind of have this 10 perspectives on that thing and probably read 50 things about that, I think your bias can be minimized because you'll become wiser. And it's a process. I don't think it's a kind of a one-stop thing. It's like endless, actually, to be very honest.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. And this was, you know, actually, like I said earlier also, that you have actually made our job easy and given so many dimensions and so many new things to the students. Now it will be easy for them to do this research, especially at the undergraduate level. So thank you so much for giving your time. Thank you. And I request Dr. Sushmita Bala, Head DME Media School, to deliver, you know, thanks to ma'am.
Thank you, Manasvi. Thank you, Meera ma'am. Basically, many students and researchers, media and communication research is a little bit complex area. But Professor Meera Desai has made this easy for us. Professor Desai is a passionate teacher and committed researcher. We are thankful to her to enlighten us all. I request her on behalf of my students to remain available for us so that we can learn more from her knowledge and experience. Thank you, ma'am, and thanks to all present here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Anytime, you can always drop an email to me and I'll be there. Like I do anything for research, I say that. So, and when I kind of deal with somebody in research, I feel that I'm also learning in that process. So I always I feel that's, it's like give back. So you have to kind of do that. So that's where I said, okay, I can't say no, because ultimately undergraduate program mein agar अच्छे बच्चे अच्छे से research करेंगे तो मास्टर्स में हमें बच्चे मिलेंगे, वो भी तो फैक्ट है. So you're all most welcome to do masters in Mumbai if you're interested. But we are a women's university, so no boys allowed. So that's the only limitation.
Thank you.
And thank you, sir, for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Can I leave now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And now I would like to inform our students that we have another session on event management. The topic is current trends and future prospects of experiential events. This will be conducted by Dr. Deepak Swaminathan. So this will be on Zoom 1 on the separate link. So all of you can join there at 11:30.
In DME, we believe in engagement and empowerment of students. And since the time this COVID-19 struck in 2020, we intensified this whole process.
For the education sector, it was a big challenge. At DME, our small dynamic team decided to take this challenge head on.
We organized different kind of programs, different webinars wherein the distinguished people from the industry and other walks of life, they are invited to interact with the students. We try to keep them engaged in taking out newsletter, writing stories, editing stories, and not only that, they make posters, they make cartoons, they write pieces for the newsletter.
Mentoring Cell at DME is a very unique feature in the ecosystem of education. While the subject teachers forge the knowledge domain strongly, it is the mentors who reach out to students in difficult times. During pandemic, when our students faced loss of their loved ones, home isolation, and several other family issues, mentors ensured that students remain cheerful, lively, and stay connected with us.
We have ensured that our students are treated with compassion, warmth, and gentle touch. And it has been our endeavor to treat all the academic activities of our students, which includes PSDA, internal assignment, and various other curricular activities accordingly.
Research Cell also pays huge emphasis on interdisciplinary nature of research. In order to promote this, the research centers of the Research Cell were also motivated to join with each other and conduct research activities for students, faculties within DME and outside DME.
While the strong academics and great industry connect is building great lawyers, media persons, and managers at DME, we at Mentoring Cell are enabling these future leaders to be compassionate, emotionally strong, and resilient for any times to come.
We empower the students. All the schools of DME, they have their students' council. In DME Media School, this council is part. They organize the program themselves, they take their own decisions, and they mobilize the students for all the good cause.
Art has the power to unite and connect during the times of crisis. Bringing people together, sharing, soothing, and inspiring are powers of art, which have been made empathically obvious by the DME cultural societies during the COVID-19 pandemic. By taking different innovative approaches in organizing various virtual competitions and events in which the students of DME have taken part with great enthusiasm and proved that DMEians are unstoppable.
Care with compassion is motto of DME. During Corona period, we were always with our students. Their well-being is primary for us. We take care of our students.
We met the expectations of the students, of the parents, and above all, of the industry. The placements this year were better than those of the previous years. DME is committed to supporting its students in all possible ways.